I found out about my husband's affair almost 3 years ago. At first, he told me he was sorry, he'd never do it again, and then he just wanted me to get over it and move on. He takes no initiative in helping me heal. I'm the one who has to point out the problems, and then I get blamed for the condition of our marriage. If I'd left him when it was first obvious he wasn't going to do the work, I'd be better off. Now I feel trapped.
I'm the one who had the affair, but I wonder how long I have to pay for it. She found out about it 5 years ago, but she keeps bringing it up and says she doesn't think she can ever forgive me. I think being alone would be better than this hell, but I don't want to be blamed for a divorce, too. I feel stuck.
In our last episode, we addressed questions like these. If you haven't listened to part 1, start there. In this episode, part 2, we're taking another look at the issues surrounding a decision to stay or leave a marriage after an affair. I'm Tim Tedder, licensed counselor and creator of AffairHealing.com, and I'm joined once again by Sharon Barbour, one of our counselor coaches here at Affair Healing. In our last episode, we discussed how people recognize when it might be time to leave and the major factors that influence that decision for both the injured and involved partners. In this episode, we'll explore what often comes next: grief, shame, the realities of co-parenting after separation, beginning new relationships, and the religious beliefs that sometimes weigh heavily on the choice to leave a marriage.
Welcome to The Recovery Room, a podcast presented by AffairHealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
As Sharon and I started talking about grief, I referenced an article I'd previously written titled, "When Your Marriage Dies, Don't Pitch Your Tent in the Cemetery." I'll post a link to that article in the episode notes, but here's our conversation about it. The idea of it is just like when someone dies, you need to go and spend time of grieving, and some people will even visit a gravesite or have a special place where they go and do that, but they don't live there. Right. You don't go to the cemetery, take your tent, pitch it there, and say, well, now this
is my
where
life
I live.
now. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're losing something, and it's painful, and you grieve it. And there are times that you should give to your grieving. And maybe at the beginning, the grieving almost consumes you. It's hard to control it. But as time goes on, you learn to take time for it, but you walk out of the cemetery and you engage in life until it's necessary to come give attention to that again. Right. And in the same way with your marriage, you are going to have to grieve. And at the beginning, it's going to be very painful. But just make sure you're intentionally stepping out of that and re-engaging with life and doing that more and more as time goes on. Don't get caught in the pain and the grief.
And that's with any grief. The difference that I have had a lot of clients tell me, though, which I agree 100%, when you are grieving an actual death of a loved one, the person is gone. Yeah. When you are grieving a divorce, the end of a marriage, that person's out there doing stuff. And it's possible that person's out there with their affair partner.
Yeah. So you have to be faced with it.
Yeah.
Plus, oftentimes in death, someone was taken from you. In this kind of grieving, someone chose to leave you. That's a whole different kind of pain. But
or you chose to leave them because of what they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's unique, but it's still that kind of grieving a loss of something that's not going to be what you always thought it would be.
Right.
You thought your story was going to go a certain way. You knew what the next chapters, at least roughly, were going to look like and how things might end. You could always imagine that. And now you're looking at blank pages of, well, I don't even know what this looks like.
And you go through the same kinds of cycles. You know, you go through the depression, you go through anger, you go through that feeling of injustice about everything, you know, and that's all okay. I think the main thing that I try to encourage clients is to not make those emotions the enemy, even when they aren't pleasant emotions, to thank the emotion for the purpose that it serves for that moment, and then let it go. It's like I will actually do this in my own life. When I'm feeling angry or upset about something, I will catch myself at times and just say, thank you, anger. You're telling me that I have to keep working through some of the stuff underneath. You're giving me an alarm bell, and I appreciate that. Thank you for serving your purpose. Now I'm letting you go.
Yeah. And pain is one of those big underneath
absolutely
emotions.
Pain, loss,
Fear.
Fear, definitely.
Oh, boy.
For a lot of people, being so afraid of being alone, this might be the first time they've ever been with no relationship.
Right.
And so it's a very scary thing of, I have no idea what my life is going to look like now. But to acknowledge that and to not kind of vilify it and to say, thank you, fear, because you're showing me that I need to pay attention to myself and my life and what I want for myself. I need to kind of name things and kind of move forward in a healthy way with that. To constantly, I think, with fear especially, is kind of reframe the thoughts that you're afraid of. Am I afraid of something that is real? Or am I afraid of things that I'm imagining might happen? So things like that. And, just getting in touch with your feelings and how they are being utilized for your good in the end can be very, very important during that whole process. And to recognize that they go up and down and up and down. It's all a cycle. It's not like, oh, I went through anger already, now it won't come up again. No, it will happen in cycles, and you can't really predict when or where, but it's all part of the natural process. And I think as long as we stay engaged with it and stay cognizant, that we can move through it in a healthy way.
The tagline on our homepage, affairhealing.com, says, infidelity is a wound, not a death blow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the fear comes from that perspective of my life is ruined. Mm-hmm. Everything I hoped for is done. Mm-hmm. And the alternatives are just darkness. And the hope feels gone. Mm-hmm. It may feel that way. That's honestly not the truth.
Right.
The chapters that are yet to be written are not the ones you thought would be there, but there are still chapters yet to be written, and you can write them. And I know that sounds really poetic and, kind of fuzzy, whatever, but it's true. And you and I have both watched clients who are in deep fear and almost hopelessness. Very hard to see the possibility of anything that would feel good in the life ahead for them, and yet are able to find their way there. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think shame is another emotion when you're talking about moving on alone.
Right, absolutely. Mostly probably for the person who had the affair, wouldn't you say?
I think mostly, but sometimes too for the injured spouse, that feeling of, what's wrong with me?
Sure.
Why wasn't I enough?
Oh, absolutely.
Can be a hard thing to shake. That kind of shame can be difficult. Many times as you move forward, if you can put that fear and that message in its proper place and learn how to heal and move forward confidently, there's some surprising things that can happen in your life that are in contrast to that message of shame.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess too, I was just thinking about it. It may be, because I've heard this happen too, is that the person who has the affair kind of blames it on the betrayed spouse.
Sure.
Well, if you had been a better spouse, I wouldn't have done this kind of thing. And that can cause a lot of shame, even when that's such, I want to say, that's BS.
Yeah, so you need to get some truer messages in your life and really pay attention to them and listen and give voice to them, because that's the truth. Yeah. The person that betrayed you, if they're saying those things to you, that's not the truth.
No, I always say they are not an adequate source of information for you. No. They are not reliable.
Yeah. But let me speak to the shame of the person who had an affair too, because I know what that's like. I've lived that. And moving on, apart from a marriage that you're responsible for breaking apart, you carry great responsibility in that, the injury that was caused and the consequence that it all led to. That can be a difficult thing to carry moving forward. And I want to say, if you're going to move forward alone and you had an affair, and you are going to wrestle with the knowledge that I caused consequence, first of all, accept that that's true. You shouldn't deny that that's. Push that away and say, I don't need to think about that anymore.
No, you have to.
There is guilt there. There is responsibility there. There is regret there. There's nothing wrong with that. I will carry the regret of my choices for the rest of my life.
Right.
But that's different from shame.
Right.
That's different from that message that will say to you, because of what I did, I have lost my right to a sense of worthiness.
Right.
I've lost my expectation for real goodness to happen in my life.
Right.
I should just expect justice and consequence.
Right.
That's not the truth.
No.
You can, through your own failure, learn some very significant things that move you forward in a healthy way.
Right.
And on the other side of it, there can be grace,
Right.
and there can be joy. There can be a lot of things that maybe your spouse, if they're not in a healthy place, are not going to want you to experience, because they will want you to face consequences. And I know I'm making a generalization there.
Right.
Not everybody does that. But it can feel that way sometimes,
Right.
the person that had the affair.
Yeah. Well, and I think regret turns into shame when you stop taking it for what it is, which is kind of a lesson not to repeat the same behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That's what regret is really for in our litany of
Right.
different kinds of emotions. When it turns into, rather than a, oh, wow, I won't do that again, it turns into a, you will always carry this.
Constant condemnation.
Yeah, it is now permanently embedded in you.
The scarlet A.
Yeah, and it defines who you are as a person now, forever and ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when it's like, whoa, now it's shame.
Yeah.
Now
Well,
it's, you're
you know
a
what?
terrible person.
There is some truth in the fact that, especially if it was public, if your affair is public, there's going to be a sense in which some people are always going to quickly identify you with that thing. You're not going to be able to escape that in this world. But what's more important is what you begin to tell yourself. And the
Yeah.
people you trust and the people that care about you should be a very different message. And there's real hope for that. So don't drown in your shame.
Right, absolutely.
You
Well,
need to
don't.
heal out of it.
Right, absolutely. And again, have compassion on yourself. You made a terrible, terrible decision.
Yeah.
And you may have made multiple terrible decisions, but when you have that wake up call and you go through that point, like you were talking about, Tim, where you are broken and just devastated at what you've done, when it really hits you, the impact of your decision and decisions and how they have affected everybody. Right. When you get to that spot, how you move through that is the definitive kind of quality of it, in starting to say, yep, I did that. That is a terrible thing. And now I have to work toward forgiving myself so that I can move forward, helping other people possibly, and letting that part of your story actually be a powerful life lesson and a powerful hope for other people too. You know, I always look at devastating things as being for others. Right. I always look at that in my own life. I say, okay, yep, this thing happened to me. It's now part of my story, and it's part of why I'm a counselor.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Let's talk about relationship issues. And especially if you are parents.
Sure.
You will never stop being parents. For the rest of your life, you're going to be parents of those children. And that relationship can be either one that is a partnership, which would be great not only for you, but for your children. Or it can be one in which you become enemies. Or it can be one in which you become strangers and just kind of each touch your kids in your own way, which gets really awkward when weddings and special events, graduations, all those things come up, grandchildren, strangers coming together. It can be a little bit weird. Yeah. But doing it in a way where there is some sort of cooperation, especially if you have young children, you have to be partners together for the sake of the children.
I know, gosh, you've got to keep them in your mind. Like that, I think, is a huge problem, because your own pain gets in the way, your own heightened emotional state that can be chronic sometimes, can go on for years. Yeah. It just blinds you to what your kids are going through.
Think about what your children need. Not what you want or need right now, but think about what your children need. If the separation or divorce is the decision that's been made, there's still things your kids need from both of you moving forward. Your children need you to protect one another's roles. If they start coming between the two of you, and listen, it's not uncommon for one parent to want to turn their kids towards their opinion.
Absolutely.
And I want you to see my side of things.
Absolutely.
I want you to agree with my point of view. And they criticize the other parent, or it becomes very lopsided. And the kids get that from both sides, and that causes stress. Those are the people we see later on for counseling.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I've done EMDR with people about their parents' divorce when they were little and how it affected them in huge ways their whole life.
Yeah.
Don't you think, in your opinion, that in an affair situation, it's even worse, because I know in normal divorces, parents kind of do that. They kind of want to be seen as the better parent. They want to be the favorite. But I mean, don't you think in this kind of situation, it's even worse?
Well, there can certainly be the temptation for the betrayed spouse to say, you're the bad person.
Sure.
That we're doing this because, and there's a truth to that.
Yeah.
That you're in this place of crisis because an affair happened. But when that becomes the focus and the blame starts happening, and that parent wants the children to understand this isn't my fault,
Right.
this is their fault,
Right.
I can guarantee the other person's probably going to want to defend themselves. So, whoa, this didn't happen outside of a context.
Right.
Do you know our marriage wasn't that blah,
if
blah,
you
blah.
only knew what they were like.
And what are the kids supposed to think about that?
No,
They get caught in the middle of this
Poor things,
this
yeah.
fight. They don't want that to happen. They don't want to have to decide who's telling the truth and who's not. Whose side do I take? Who's don't?
No.
Take both of your sides. And you know what? You need to suck it up. Encourage a healthy relationship between your children and the other parent, despite how you feel about them,
Right.
despite, of course, I'm not talking about in issues of risk or abuse. We're just talking about the normal, because you're hurt and you're angry and bad things were done. That's no question about that. The health of your children is going to be affected by the choices you make.
And you know what's really interesting? I have had a client who really stuck up for their spouse during their whole separation process. This person was so kind about the person having the affair. Essentially, their spouse was ping-ponging for a long time. They were separated. And the kids know it because they're a little older. They knew kind of what was going on. But during this whole separation, this person, the betrayed spouse, was so kind and gave so much grace to the affair person. Only said, very kind things. Didn't like blow smoke, but only said very kind, supportive things about the person having the affair to the kids. It's a little bit counterintuitive, I guess, but the children ended up seeing the betrayed spouse who was saying all the kind things and refused to say nasty things about the person having the affair. They saw them in just glowing terms.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, kids aren't stupid.
No, of course not.
And even young ones, they may not be able to articulate those conclusions or have the deep insight or perspective to really be able to define the differences between one or the other, but they grow up understanding that.
Sure.
They intuit it. They feel it.
Sure.
And I think it's really hard when one parent's trying to do that and the other is not.
Right.
Because you start to think, what are my kids going to think? Because I know when they go and spend time with that other parent, I think they're hearing a version of things. They're hearing more criticism. And I want to defend myself. Don't. Because in the long run, your kids are going to realize what was right and what was healthy and what wasn't. In the long run, you're going to be better off if you continue to hold to that standard of wanting to encourage the other parent, their relationship with them, say the things that are positive, don't criticize them, don't enter that game. It just makes it worse.
Yeah. Would you go so far as to say, because this just popped in my head, but in your opinion, would you go so far as to say kids intuit motives behind what parents are saying about the other parent?
I think even young kids, I think sometimes, I don't think they understand it, but I think
they can sense
they pick up
a
the
motivation
stuff.
behind it. So depending on what, it doesn't even matter necessarily what you're saying as much as the heart behind it. It's almost like kids have a radar for that in their parents.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, parents, when your kids aren't there, if you're moving on away from the marriage, have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And talk about how are we going to cooperate in this. If there's any place where are you going to set down the weapons and be a little bit more gracious or vulnerable, it's in the context of things that you're going to do for your kids' sake and ways you will cooperate together for your kids' sake. Don't be that family at graduations or at weddings. Your problem becomes their problem.
Right,
and now all their energy has to go into how do we keep them apart? How do we
Right.
keep anything bad from happening? How sad is that?
is so
It does
sad.
not have to happen.
Right.
Let your problems be your problems, not your children's problems. You'll find a link in the episode notes to my article, How to Talk to Your Children About Divorce or Separation. If you're facing this decision and you're parenting children, I strongly encourage you to spend some time with that piece. Now, Sharon and I move into a discussion about things to consider when starting new relationships after a marriage ends.
I heard you say something at one point that I really liked, and it was, Let new relationships come as a result of your healing, not used as an attempt to heal. I think that is a very, very powerful sentence. Yeah. It is a very huge nuance, because a lot of times people go right into the rebound, quote unquote, relationship because feeling like things are ending becomes uncomfortable. They want a new relationship right away. Yeah. That's real common. I mean, real common. I would say 90% of people want that, myself included. I know in the past, when relationships ended, I was immediately kind of going scanning for a new one. And that is not at all going to help you heal. It is an attempt to heal, but that is not.
Because all of that stuff you really haven't given the proper attention to, you take that right into the next relationship, and it feels good. It feels connected. You feel, oh, here's all the stuff I've missed, and I feel like someone's attentive to me. I feel good about myself.
Yeah, again. But that's the whole thing that sparked the affair in the affair person. Oh, this feels so good, and it's not real, really. I mean, not that you can't have a good real relationship with a person right off the bat, but underlying it, again, like you said, you're dragging all the hurt stuff with you, and it will sometimes hinder you healing at all. Other times it will just slow down your healing. It's not fair to the new relationship, really, to drag all that stuff with you. You really need to be working through your stuff before you start looking for new romance.
You got to understand yourself first, and then what to look for.
Right.
That doesn't happen when you just jump into the next thing that feels good.
And I think also one of the things that comes out of spending some time healing is that you will also be able to see the good that your ex had. And it may be that if you look for a new relationship too soon, you're totally making the ex person terrible across the board. And what that can do is cause you to jump into something that is exactly opposite from the person that you just split up from. And that might not be right, because the person you just split up from did have some good qualities, and you may want to take some of those with you. Do you know what I mean? So rather than making it black and white, you can actually kind of pick and choose some really good stuff that came out of it too. So you're not just choosing a relationship because it's exactly opposite.
Let's just end by considering this spiritual aspect. And the only reason I'm doing this, because I know from our background, kind of the Christian faith background, we become aware that some churches and some teaching are pretty strict when it comes to issues of divorce.
Absolutely.
In fact, some are prohibitive.
Yes.
And so people think, I can't even consider the thought of moving alone, even if I think that'd be healthy for me, because I think it's prohibited. I'm not allowed to do that.
Yep.
God doesn't allow it. We work with clients from other faiths and other cultures and no faith at all. And this dynamic, this expectation can come not just from Christian circles, but from others as well. But let's talk about it from our perspective.
I will tell you that in my first marriage, I stayed probably at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years longer in that marriage than I would have, just because I was so tormented by the idea of displeasing God by divorcing.
Because, and God's people. I mean, like what people in the church would say about
that's what they were telling me, yes. It's never God's will for divorce. It's never God's will for divorce. It's never, et cetera, et cetera. It was really tormenting. I mean, I lost sleep over it so many times. It was awful because I wanted to end it because he had been unfaithful on more than one occasion. And I still, even though the Bible says, well, unless there is infidelity, it's never God's will for divorce. Even though I heard that, I knew the pressure was on, though, from the church. But you really don't want to do it, though.
Right.
Even if you have an out in Scripture, you really don't want to do it.
Well, let me just say that there is a verse in the Bible that says God hates divorce.
Yeah?
Yeah, so people see.
Of course. Who doesn't?
But there are some things I think God hates worse than divorce. You know?
Yes.
Marriage is meant to be a vow, a promise that you keep. And yet, when infidelity occurs, and even though I know that verse is translated adultery in some translations of the Bible, the word is porneia, the Greek word porneia, that's translated that way, actually is much broader than just adultery. It just means, what's the word we get pornography from? It's a sexual infidelity that's really kind of broad. Well, I don't want to get too technical or biblical about that stuff, but even if you just were going to isolate it to adultery, well, then that's at least something that God hates worse than divorce, because he says if that happens, you are free to end the marriage. You don't have to. It's not a command.
Right.
In fact, grace can happen there too, and marriages can be restored, and that's a great story of grace, but it's not a requirement.
Right.
So if God doesn't require it, we need to be very careful that we don't impose that requirement ourselves.
Right, right.
And if someone chooses not to stay in a marriage, even if you're in a
Right.
church, I don't believe anybody has a right to come alongside and guilt them
Yeah.
and tell them you're not doing the right thing.
Right, right.
That's just,
Well-
if God doesn't do it, what right do you have to do that?
Oh, absolutely. But then again, isn't that always the problem? But the first time that he was unfaithful to me, I did make the decision on my own to stay. And that one was my own decision. That one I based it on, I really want to give it more of a shot because we had only been married like 2 months the first time. So I really did want to try to work it out. And he seemed very remorseful and all that. So I did stay for my own. But when it happened again later, it really was more of, I had people in my life at that time going, oh, well, you really want to work it out. You really don't want to do this thing. And I was so conflicted about it and stayed. And then it happened again. And, you know, it just...
Well, even after that, you've had people in the church condemning you.
Well, what happened was after I had divorced him, actually, I went to a Bible study that was part of the church that we had gone to together. And I went to this Bible study, and somebody that had known us before asked me where he was. This woman that I hadn't spoken to, I mean, I barely knew her. And I told her, I said, oh, you know, well, we got a divorce, you know. And without her knowing anything, because I always refused to drag his name through the mud, she just looked at me and said, oh, well, Christians divorcing each other, that's just totally foreign to me, is what she said. And I tried to be gracious.
"Thank you, ma'am."
I did. I tried to be gracious. I just said, well, I can understand you thinking that because you don't know the story and everything. So, okay, then take care. And I never went back to that Bible study.
Yeah.
And I never went back to that church either because I felt so condemned by that. But
For some of you listening to this may just seem really weird to you. You don't come from an environment where that's that much pressure or religious expectation, but some do.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And I want to be very careful. I don't want to play the role of a pastor or spiritual teacher in this regard. You know, there are a number of different perspectives on what the Bible says about divorce. I would say to you, if you're curious, go to it's called a concordance. Some Bibles have them in the back of them, but you can find these places. It's like a dictionary of where all these different words appear in the Bible, and just look at the different passages that talk about divorce or adultery. There are a few that pop up as commonly known, but if you start looking at every place the Bible talks about it, Old and New Testament, I'm going to tell you this, you're going to get a little bit confused because there are some interesting messages about all this. We pick and choose the ones we want to do.
Well, and I'll tell you, you know what? That was her fear speaking, that
Yeah.
woman. She was afraid because it's like, if that can happen to those Christians, oh my gosh, it could happen to me. And I think that's at the root of a lot of that kind of stuff. So,
Well, bottom line, the message of the gospel and the message of our work is a message of grace, is a
Absolutely.
message of healing. It's not a message of judgment and condemnation.
No.
So if you're in a place or if you're in a church where even despite your efforts to heal, you feel this condemnation and pressure, you're probably in the wrong church. You know?
right, yeah.
You don't need to go to a place that just, you know, hey, whatever you want to do, it's fine. I'm not saying that. But you do need to be in a place, we should be in a place that is teaching that the good news is one of forgiveness. The good news is one of grace. The good news is a message of freedom as we move forward.
Right.
Not this constraining, judgmental, narrow obligation that is filled with shame.
Right.
And,
Well, that's
you
what
know,
it is.
yeah.
It's a shame thing. Like, ooh, if you do this, shame on you. You're a bad person.
If you'd like our help in working through your affair recovery needs, check out the coaching information at affairhealing.com. I'll include links in the episode notes. Thank you for listening to our conversation. See you next time.
Faith